That's that then. The message is certainly clear enough. No thanks. The North East spoke and the Deputy Prime Minister was forced to swallow the bitterest of pills. His 20-year dream of regional government in tatters. Just take a look at this. You'll never see a political map of the North East quite like it, and I doubt you ever will again. The no vote carried the day from the Scottish border to the North Yorkshire border. No exceptions. Even in the most robust of Labour strongholds, the answer was no. And the Yes campaign can't even seek comfort in a narrow defeat, far from it. From a turnout of over 40%, they were defeated by a margin of 4-1. The final declaration came in the early hours this morning. It was a long night for our political editor, Richard Moss, but he's still with us now. Richard.
Yes, if you forgive the industrial-sized bags under my eyes. But I'm here at the Durham Scala Theatre, and of course with any political campaign where there's a winner and a loser, there is plenty of drama, tragedy and joy as well. But on this night, there wasn't actually a great deal of tension. The reason why is because as soon as those ballots started opening, it became completely obvious that this was an overwhelming rejection of the idea of an elected regional assembly. The No campaign had won a quite dramatic victory. And today, both campaigns have been trying to adjust to what that means. A white elephant collapsing. A symbol not just of the end of the assembly dream, but of the deflation its supporters must have felt today. 20 years of campaigning for devolution destroyed in a single sentence from a returning officer.
And no, 696,519. And that the region has voted no to an elected assembly for the North East.
It was a landslide against a regional assembly. No part of the North East said yes. The personalities and politicians who backed it were still on hand, but nothing could disguise the scale of their defeat.
They weren't taken in by the spin from the politicians at the end. We had Prescott, Blair, Kennedy and all of his friends up, and the North East people weren't taken in, they rejected it. They said it's a white elephant, and I think they did the right thing.
At the Yes campaign HQ today, time for brave faces. But what about the woman who was seen as an assembly leader in waiting?
Well, I've said that I'm not going to stand again for the House of Commons at the next election. That decision stays. I haven't changed my mind about that at all. I would love to do something to help promote the region in future, but whether I do or not is very much open to question at this stage.
And then there's the man who gave the North East the chance to say no. A press conference in the early hours and the acceptance of a shattering defeat.
Last night, the people in the North East decided they do not want an elected assembly. They have had their say. As a government, we believe in giving people more say over the decisions that affect them.
On Teesside, the no vote was particularly strong. Here in Redcar, 84% were voting no.
Ah, good. That's why I voted against it.
I just voted no, and that was it. That was too much.
Brilliant. Yes, yes. I think it'll be good. I don't think that the country should be split up into our little regions. You know, fair enough splitting off individual countries like Wales and Scotland, but I think we should stay as we are, as one whole England.
So no need for recounts, and I suppose the Yes campaign had succeeded in one of its aims. The North East spoke with one united voice. The problem was, it said no.
Well, Richard, the main talking point, of course, is the huge majority against the Assembly, and yet the Yes camp thought it had a big lead at the start of the campaign. So what went wrong?
Well, that's right, Carol. I mean, at the start of September, a poll actually suggested the Yes campaign were more than 20 percentage points ahead. So something clearly changed and very rapidly to transform this into such a landslide for the No's. So did the Yes side get it badly wrong, or was it always going to be a struggle to sell the powers on offer in this Assembly? That's something our political correspondent, Mark Denton, has been examining.
Optimism, enthusiasm and a 20-point lead in the polls. Yes supporters seem to have it all when they launched their campaign here in the shadow of the Angel of the North. So how have they managed to lose? The Yes campaign had celebrities coming out of its ears. Tony Blair and Charles Kennedy, Brendan Foster, Ken Livingstone and even Gaza. But some marketing experts say that focus on celebs was wrong.
It was an absolute disaster. Focusing on high-profile celebrities and business people, regardless of being members of the establishment, was just playing into the hands of the No campaign. The average man on the street wants to know what the Assembly was going to do for them.
Assembly wouldn't have been able to put a dual carriageway on the A1 in Northumberland. There were no powers over schools or hospitals. So while the empty buildings were ready for an Assembly HQ in Durham, some experts say the powers gap killed the Yes campaign.
They couldn't point to everyday politics, areas like health, education, hospitals, police, transport, control of the roads, all the things which on a day-to-day basis voters would be hoping that such an assembly could actually deal with.
Round and people go.
13 district councils providing services like this annex sports centre would have gone if there'd been a yes vote. So was there a backlash?
People didn't want to lose their local councils who deliver what they want at a price they can afford. There's no doubt about it in my mind that that is what influenced the vote.
Tonight, Yes campaigners are only just at the start of a long period of reflection. There won't be another referendum for at least 7 years.
Mark Denton reporting. There have been plenty of political fireworks in this campaign. You'll probably hear some more tonight. The firework display at Akeley Heads is about to start in a few minutes. Now, with me now are two people who also had long nights last night and a long few weeks. John Tomoney from the Yes campaign and Graham Robb from the No campaign. John Tomoney, did you get your strategy wrong, or was this just too hard a thing to sell, really? There weren't enough powers?
Well, I think we did have a difficulty in persuading the people of the North East that the package of powers on offer was enough to make a difference to their lives here and now. I think there is a strong desire in the region for change. The status quo doesn't serve the North East well. It doesn't give the North East a fair deal, and I think people want change. But what we couldn't persuade them was that this particular package of powers would make a concrete and immediate difference to their lives. That was something that we found very difficult to do.
Graham Robb, I mean, your obvious message obviously struck a chord, an overwhelming victory. But the criticism of you has always been, well, what's left is the status quo. No change means that we're left with all the problems.
Well, that's a true criticism, but we were the No campaign. No's a negative word. But I'm positive about the North East, and I think that the North East should be able to recover from this and move on positively, because it gives an opportunity to force the political parties and the government to think again and come up with constructive suggestions. I've got suggestions of my own. I mean, I was looking just at home and when the government in the House of Commons last debated the North East. Do you know it was 5 years ago, 1999, when the North East was last debated by our MPs. And if you look at our 30 MPs, over the last 7 years of the government, around 6 of them have been ministers from the North. I think we need a minister for the North in a Treasury department or a DTI department to shake our tree. And furthermore, I think we also need to make real meaningful devolution downwards, enhancing local councils and maybe elected mayors.
Johnson, do you want to come back on that? I mean, is that a possible solution now that your idea of an assembly is out of the way?
We've had ministers for the North for 50 years. You know, you go back to the 1960s. We had Lord Hailsham arriving in his flat cap, Conservative minister, to solve the problems of the North. That really demonstrates the problems. Westminster, Whitehall pays periodic attention to the problems of the region. What we need is a strong focus on the North East.
But the problem is that your solution has gone. Have you got anything that you can think of as an alternative?
No. I mean, my view is there was a solution proposed here, and I think it's glib. It's very glib to say that there are easy solutions to pull off the shelf now to solve the problems of the North East. What we need is calm reflection and cool analysis in the coming weeks. It's not elected mayors or whatever.
We need new ideas as well.
A minister for the North is not a new idea. It's a tired one. It's a tired one.
Well, look. That is one thing that is lacking in the government. A voice for the North is lacking in the government. We don't need a new supra-regional body with the expenses and the bureaucracy.
Well, we've had that debate, though, haven't we?
We've had that debate, so we can move away from it. And we need to look at maybe enhancing the powers of local authorities. John's always saying I'm a Conservative, and he's right. But as a Conservative, I think I've seen the error of the Conservative Party's ways. I'd like to see councils freed up on financial restrictions so that they can face their electorate and be accountable for what they spend.
OK, John Tomoney, Graham Robb, we'll have to leave it there. Well, viewers in North Yorkshire and Cumbria, you obviously didn't get a vote last night, but you might remember that you were actually supposed to vote in referendums on the same night. North Western Yorkshire were originally scheduled to have them, but the government postponed them, officially because of concerns about postal voting. Really, though, I think they thought they were heading for defeat. So it was Plan B, get a yes vote in the North East, then push again in the other two regions. So with that plan shattered, the government's rethinking.
Well, we'll obviously reflect on what happened here in the North East last night, and we'll take further soundings before we reach a conclusion. As I say, I don't want to rush to an instant judgment, but in the light of this, I do think we need to reflect and think carefully about how to move forward.
Well, that's the government's official line, but I think it's wise to say that really there is no prospect of these referendums probably going ahead. Even if Labour wins the next general election, you have to have a suspicion that these are going to be kicked into the long grass, because if they couldn't win it in the North East, which they thought was the most enthusiastic area, they were very unlikely to win it in more sceptical areas. But there are campaigners in Cumbria who do believe that if the government learnt the lessons from this referendum, they could still hold them in the North West.
The government promised that they'd only postponed the referendum in the North West, and we will be pressing the government to have that referendum because I believe that the people of the North West ought to have their say, but we will be calling for a proper debate about the matter and not for a mudslinging match which seems to have happened in the North East.
So that's campaigners in Cumbria, but is there actually any enthusiasm amongst the voters? Well, we've been taking the temperature in York, and I have to say there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for having a referendum there.
Not particularly, because I don't think... Well, I think if there was one, I would vote. I didn't want one. I think we should be governed from central.
No, it doesn't concern me at all, because I don't think there really needs to be one.
No, and if there was going to be a regional assembly considered in York, I don't think it's a very good idea.
So if there had been a vote, you'd have voted against?
I would have certainly voted against, yes.
Not particularly, no. I don't think Yorkshire needs its own assembly. I think it can be handled by the government in London.
And had there been a chance for you to vote, would you have gone out there and voted, and which way would you have voted?
I would have voted, and I would have voted against it.
Richard, thank you for that. We'll come back to you a bit later on. And